If you like this content, please consider subscribing. Slay the Spire is a roguelike dungeon crawler card game with probably one of the most fun and creative deck building systems I've ever seen. It takes that roguelike idea of trying to find every single overpowered combination possible and exploit it as much as possible, but it ports it into a randomized card game. Whereas other roguelike action games, we'll take Risk of Rain 2 for example, use things like attack speed, crit, movement speed, and a couple more things for the basis of exploiting very powerfully stacking items, Slay the Spire doesn't have any of those things. It doesn't have attack speed because it's a turn-based game. It doesn't have crit because it's built in a way to where you should be able to calculate everything before you press in turn so that you know exactly what's gonna happen. And it doesn't have movement speed because, you know, it's a card game. So how is it a strategic card game where you can plan everything out, a randomized roguelike game where you can build your own deck and playstyle, and after playing it for only 8 hours, one of my favorite single-player games? Before I explain how the game works, I want to mention my Twitch channel. Most, if not all of the footage you see back here was taken from one of my streams. And I'm trying to stream at least 2 to 3 times a week. You can usually catch me streaming the couple of days after I post a video with some exceptions. So check it out if you're interested, or follow my Twitter because I post stream and video announcements there. I'll see you around. Before you start a run, you're prompted to choose a character. While in some games, the character only changes a couple things like what abilities you can use, your base stats. In Slay the Spire, they change almost everything. The only cards that aren't the same between all characters are the colorless cards. Most of the cards you'll be getting are character specific, and most of the character specific cards have something to do with the character's playstyle. Whether the card just fits the personality or style of the character, for example the card Rampage on Ironclad, which scales its damage every time you play it in a fight, fitting that bloodlust warrior vibe you get from Ironclad. Or maybe that card has something to do with a special mechanic only for that character. Like my current favorite character, Defect, who can summon orbs with cards, and those orbs have special effects like giving you block, or giving you energy, or dealing a ton of damage. You could probably imagine how much differently you could play the game depending on this one choice alone. While Ironclad is reliant on cards that directly nuke opponents, or something like that, I haven't played Ironclad very much. Defect, depending on the type of playstyle you're going for, is more reliant on these orbs to deal damage. The amount that the characters change the game makes up for how many characters there actually are. 4 doesn't sound like a whole lot, but they basically split the game into 4 different games. So once you go into a run, the game will generate a bunch of paths for you, and all of the pathways eventually lead to the boss at the end of the level. Now you have to plot your path and decide which way you want to go. Do you want to fight a bunch of enemies so that you can get more cards and have a ton of gold for the shop? Do you want to target elites to get relics? Do you want to go through a path of question mark encounters and just see what happens? Whatever you want to do, you plot it out here. And you can always change your path along the way, so if you're super low on health, make your way towards a rest site to regain some. And if you have a ton of gold, make your way towards a merchant. This is one of the ways it controls its RNG and still stays a strategy game. It generates a bunch of paths and lets you choose which one you want to go on instead of randomly generating every single encounter. Which is fun, because you feel like you actually have some control over the game even if it deals you a bad hand. The deck building part of the game comes in with the battles and merchants. When you win a battle, you can choose one card from a pool of 3 random cards. Again, this is how the game still holds on to that fun randomness but stays a strategy game. That, as well as just being able to decline picking up a relic if you just don't want the effect of it. And trust me, there's a few that you just might not want to deal with. We'll take Snecko Eye for example. It randomizes the energy costs of all your cards whenever you draw one, which can either be amazing or a complete disaster. Now that you know how the game mode works, let's get into the actual gameplay. Slay the Spire has surprisingly exciting gameplay for a card game, with all the fun moments that you would get in a fast, over-the-top action game, but you can calculate each turn. The exciting part of this game doesn't come from quick thinking or dodging a fast projectile, it comes from discovering a tactic that will win you the game. Maybe it was a series of cards that together are so much stronger than they were individually. Or maybe you calculated the most efficient way of defending a game-ending attack, so now it leaves you at 1 health instead of killing you. The fun in this game comes from the discovery of tactics, and the eureka moment that you get when you finally see the exact order of cards that you should use. Now this system would be pretty boring if all of the cards were just run-of-the-mill attack and defense cards. How does Slay the Spire spice things up? I could explain this a simple way, but overcomplicating things is fun. I think the most fun way to break this down and understand the system is to split it into 3 parts: variables, conditions, and effects. Some cards only have effects. These can be the run-of-the-mill attack and defense cards, or they can have more effects. Effects are things like deal damage to the target, give yourself block, give yourself energy so you can use more cards, draw a card. Even how the card removes energy from your character, that would be an effect too. There are some cards that apply status effects to enemies as well. A few examples of these effects are things like Vulnerable, which increases damage against the target by 50%, and Frail, which reduces block gained from cards. Other cards have conditions for those effects. Conditions take a look at a specific variable to determine the potency of the card's effect, or if the effect will even happen at all. And variables are answers to questions like, how much health do you have? Is your target going to attack you? Do you have any block? How many cards have you played this turn? To tie this all together, we'll take the card Blood for Blood in Ironclad's deck. The condition is asking for the variable, how many times have you taken damage this fight? The condition is then changing the effect of how much energy you lose when you play the card, all leading up to the primary effect, deal 18 damage. Another example would be Entrench. The condition is asking how much block you have, and then it is giving you that amount of block as the effect. Here's where things get interesting. You're against an enemy that has 55 health, but they're going to deal 100 damage next turn. You have 5 health and 3 energy. Your deck contains Bash, Blood for Blood that has been reduced down to 1 energy, and Hemokinesis. From the surface, this looks really rough. If you just add all the damage numbers up, you don't have enough to kill, and you don't even have enough energy to play all the cards. But if you take a second look, first, play Bash so that you play Vulnerable. Now you're down to 1 energy, play Hemokinesis dealing amplified damage, and since you just lost health, you reduce Blood for Blood's energy to 0. Now you can play it and deal amplified damage from Vulnerable, killing the boss instantly before it even had a chance to attack you. This is a pretty simple example of how cards can string together to become much more potent than they would be otherwise. And this stuff can get complicated after a while, but it's fun because you have all the time in the world to think about it. Eventually on boss fights you'll be thinking each turn through for minutes, trying to find the most efficient way to scrape by while being bombarded by a relentless onslaught of attacks, and also try and get damage in at the same time. As much as I've talked up this calculated, predictable gameplay, it also means that if you're going to die, it is inevitable. You actively have to press in turn knowing that the next attack will kill you. There's no random crits to surprise kill the enemy, no dodging to save you, you just die. While there is some randomness before you've played all the cards, when everything is said and done, and the solution doesn't lie directly in front of you, the game is over.
Well, that's free. Wait, I forgot. So he's about to go crazy, right? Mirror. Alright, I'm on 18 health, I have to fight this boss. 47 damage. I think the only chance is that we draw Equilibrium. Alright, we gotta defend it. Another one. What do I do? Alright, I have I think I start off with double equilibrium, right? Double, boom, boom, 26. Alright, I think heat sinks machine learning for a possible, like, defensive card. I lived through this, right? Like, I'm not just dead. Do I get out of this? I don't think I do. Alright, I could just go all out focus and attempt to, like, murder him. Blaze of Glory. But what if I could make it out? Do you guys see any scenario where I survive this? If not, then I'm just gonna like blow up with him. Yep, there is none. Goodbye. Goodbye, world. Man, it's over. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Compile driver? I draw this card, scrape, right? And there's a possibility I could get Equilibrium. There's 2 Equilibriums in here, alright? They could be 0. There's a chance. There's a chance. Are you ready? Scrape. Aw. Well, looks like that's all I've got. See you in the next world.
I'm going to be making another video on Slay the Spire, and it's going to be out sometime next week. This video, I wanted to focus mainly on my first time playing the game. The second one is going to focus more on the end game and what it has to offer after playing it for a longer amount of time. And I assume I'll just have a better understanding of the game, so I'll give you a deeper explanation than I did here. Like I said, most of the fun right now just comes from discovering new tactics, but what happens when you know most of them? So if you want to see more, subscribe, and I'll be here next week. I forgot to say this last time, but if you want to go and help out the channel, please go like my Steam review. It'll be linked in the description, and it increases the chances that people see my video by a ton, so it's greatly appreciated if you do. And again, I'm trying to stream at least 2 to 3 times a week, so if you're interested in seeing that, then go follow either my Twitch or my Twitter, and you'll be notified when I'm streaming.